Hi everyone, thanks for joining this session on tackling disability hate incidents. It's with me, Isobel from Cafe. I'm a white woman in my mid-20s with long blonde hair. I'm wearing a brown jumper and I'm sitting in my spare room / office and my pronouns are she and her. And if you'd like to share any of your experiences as fans, to do with disability hate incidents during this session, please do post them in the Q&A box. And if you need to, you can do this anonymously. And also please put some questions in the chat whilst we go through the session, because there should be a little bit of time at the end for me to answer any questions. Next slide, please. So this is going to be a session looking at disability hate incidents within football. We're going to look at what disability hate incidents are, what they look like in football, what the impact of experiencing a disability hate incident can be on fans, what the current situation is in European football, and what we can be doing in football to reduce disability hate. And this is all based on Cafe's research project into disability hate that's been going on since last year. So thank you so much to all of the disabled spectators that took part in our research and shared their experiences. Next slide, please. So a disability hate incident occurs when disabled people, but also people perceived to be disabled or people who are associated with disabled people, so maybe their family, friends, partner, personal assistant, are targeted on the basis of it being linked to disability, and it's motivated by hostility and prejudice towards disabled people. And if these incidents are considered a criminal offence under local law, then it becomes a hate crime. And hate crimes and incidents include verbal abuse, harassment, bullying, intimidation, physical violence, property damage, and disability slurs. And we're using the term disability hate incident because in certain places, an incident will be considered a hate crime because that's how it falls under the law, whereas the same incident in another country or locality would be considered a hate incident. Next slide. So the current kind of key statistics in football, we've got the 2016 statistics from the Cafe Disabled Fan Survey, and this surveyed disabled fans across the UEFA region, and that found that about 24% of disabled fans had experienced or witnessed disability discrimination. And then in 2017, we've got some country-specific statistics, the only ones that are available for football at the moment. And these have come from the disability charity Scope. And they found that 29% of disabled fans in the UK have experienced verbal disability abuse, and 40% of disabled fans in the UK had experienced negative attitudes from other fans. And then the most recent Cafe research is from last year from our non-visible disabilities and conditions survey, and that found that 40% of non-visibly disabled fans had experienced or witnessed disability abuse. So it's clearly an issue within football, and the actual figures are likely to be much higher because disability hate crime in general is really critically underreported due to the inaccessible ways of reporting, concerns and fears about the consequences of reporting. And we'll actually hear about a story of some fans later that kind of shows the kind of negative consequences that can arise for fans. And because so many disabled people actually experience harassment in their everyday lives, that it kind of becomes normalised, and it's not something that people even realise they should and can be reporting. And 5 years on from our last survey of differently disabled fans, it's really clear that we need some more research to get an up-to-date picture of what's happening with fans across Europe and of all disabilities. Next slide, please. So in terms of what disability hate incidents look like in football, All of the examples I'm going to talk about have been reported to CAFE in the past or we've been made aware of. So, for example, a person with limited mobility being abused by non-disabled fans for moving too slowly up a staircase. We've also heard from fans who've had mobility equipment stolen or damaged whilst it's being stored at stadiums. We've heard from autistic spectators that have been stimming in the crowds and they've been mimicked and mocked by other spectators. And we've also, I'm sure we've all seen this across football, whether it's at matches or online, is the use of disability slurs and derogatory disability terminology to abuse disabled people, but also non-disabled players, match officials, club staff. And the kind of impact that these incidents have on disabled people can be really vast. And a lot of the fans we spoke to in our research said that they wouldn't go back to grounds, including their own ground, because of their experiences. So, for example, a disabled couple that I'd spoken to said that they actually had to give up their season ticket because they'd experienced abuse multiple times from their own fans. And it ended up feeling like something that was going to happen every time they went. And as the kind of match drew closer towards the end of the week, they said they would feel really anxious about going. So in the end, they just ended up giving up their season ticket. It can also have quite a long-term effect on people that either experience or witness it. So we heard from a parent of an autistic child that told us that their son had experienced abuse at an away match several seasons previously, and then they were relegated. But towards the end of the current season, when we were talking about it, they were going to be re-promoted for the next season, and they said that their child, but also them and the rest of their family, felt increased anxiety about this team being promoted back into their league because they would have to go to this ground if they wanted to follow their team on away days. And witnessing disability hate incidents can have a really significant impact on disabled fans. So, for example, one person that we spoke to said that he'd seen people on Twitter mocking disabled people at matches that they'd filmed. And after he'd seen these videos, he said he felt really uncomfortable about going to matches because he was worried that he would be kind of mimicked and mocked, but also that this would then be recorded and put online. Next slide, please. So what can football do to start tackling disability hate incidents within football? Well, I think the most important thing we can be doing is trying to challenge attitudes about disabled people. So the Equality and Human Rights Commission have said that one of the key factors in kind of behind hate incidents is that the people committing them see minority groups as different to themselves. So we need to be kind of tackling this misconception that disabled people are different from non-disabled people if we want to start reducing hate incidents. And what clubs can do is start highlighting the common ground that there is between disabled people and non-disabled people. So challenging the stereotypes and reducing the beliefs that disabled people are inherently different. And one way you can do this is by celebrating the disabled fans at your club and promoting the kind of positive role that disabled people play as fans, as volunteers and employees within your club or national association. And it's really important that your media departments acknowledge that they've got this responsibility to present an image of disabled people that will be empowering, rather than an image that says they're vulnerable or charity cases. This is all about trying to get people to realise that there's not inherent differences between disabled and non-disabled people. And kind of part of our own commitment to this at CAFE is that we're going to be launching a working group and research project on responsible reporting in early 2021. So we'll be 2022. So we'll be sharing the results from that project with you in the new year. Next slide, please. Separating disabled spectators from non-disabled spectators reinforces this idea that disabled spectators are different, and we need to be working towards ending segregation now. Clubs and national associations have to commit to inclusive seating plans where disabled people are not in these segregated spectator areas, but are able to sit across the stadium. We need to legitimise the rightful place of disabled people within a football crowd, and you can do that by positioning them among their own fans. In addition, stadium infrastructure creates these spaces where disabled supporters can become vulnerable to hate. As we heard in the session yesterday about being a disabled away supporter, travelling spectators are often completely unable to sit with their own fans due to the stadium infrastructure and have to sit with opposition team supporters. And this means that they quite easily become targets for verbal attacks and maybe even violence from home supporters. And I'm sure many of you have heard about what happened in 2014 when Paris Saint-Germain were actually sanctioned by UEFA because their fans threatened, spat at and threw items at disabled spectators that had been forced to sit in the home stand. So it's therefore really, really imperative that disabled spectators are able to sit with other travelling supporters. And this both kind of reduces the likelihood that they're going to experience this abuse from the opposition, but they're also able to have an equal experience to that of a non-disabled fan. Next, please. Unfortunately, the use of disability slurs and language associated with disability being used to offend is really common within football, and this creates a hostile environment for disabled spectators, especially when it's used to criticise players, officials and coaching staff. And if it's used by high-profile players and managers, as we've seen in the past, this kind of legitimises the use of these terms and means that fans think that they're acceptable. So it's really important that we take an active stance against these slurs, and that includes educating your players, because the use of this language is kind of the first step towards more serious acts of discrimination and potentially even violence against disabled people. So it's something that we need to stamp out now. We've recently published some cafe terminology guidance, and we want clubs to start using this to help educate their fans, players and their staff on inclusive terminology. And we really recommend that this is done with the support of disabled fans in your area, so you can make it specific to the terminology used in your country. Next slide, please. We also really, really want clubs to start taking disability hate seriously. We've heard quite a lot of stories from fans where they've reported and there's been no action taken. And the actions that clubs do take once someone has gone through the sort of emotional turmoil of actually reporting something to you can have a really significant impact and effect on fans. So, for example, we heard from fans that had reported an incident that had happened in the stands at their club to their club, but instead of the club tackling the perpetrators, they actually asked the disabled fans to move to a different area of the stadium, to move their season ticket to a different area of the stadium. It's a completely unacceptable solution, and it ended up in the spectator choosing not to renew their season ticket, which meant that a disabled fan was pushed out of attending for no reason. So when clubs take these actions or don't take these actions, it sends a message to victims that's damaging. It tells them that they're not valued. It reinforces the concerns that disabled spectators have about reporting, and it tells people that abusing disabled fans is acceptable behaviour according to their club. So it's really important that clubs need to put clear procedures in place so that when an incident is reported to them, they're responding appropriately, respectfully, and they're actually going to tackle the issue. It's very, very important that staff are trained who are receiving these reports, and they need to know how to recognise when disability hate incidents are occurring, because it shouldn't always fall on disabled people to report either for themselves or for other disabled people that they witness being attacked. And if you are going to provide a reporting system at your own club, you need to make this accessible. Next slide, please. So I'm really pleased today to announce that CAFE has actually launched our own reporting tool, and this will allow people to report directly to CAFE. As we saw at the start of this session, up-to-date, detailed research is required that includes differently disabled fan experiences from across Europe. And we need to kind of understand more about disability hate incidents that are occurring in order to make sure we can create recommendations that will help tackle them and support victims afterwards. So anybody that experiences or witnesses an incident should please use this tool to report to CAFE, even if they've occurred in previous seasons, because we're able to use that data to help inform us on what we should be doing. If you do report something that happens in the current season, then we can take that forward to clubs on your behalf if you'd prefer to remain anonymous, or we can add our weight if you'd like to take things forward to the club yourself. We will advocate for the actions to be taken against perpetrators, and we want to work with clubs to make sure that these instances aren't happening. So it's really essential that any clubs and national associations share incidents that have been reported to them with CAFE, and we'll do the same to you. We also want you to raise awareness with your fans, disabled and non-disabled fans, that this reporting tool exists and that disabled people are able to report their experiences to us. Next slide, please. So I just want to really quickly show you where you can find the reporting tool on our website. So if you visit www.cafefootball.eu, you can then navigate to the right-hand side. There's a tab that says Get Involved, and that'll open a drop-down menu which says Report Incident. So if you click on that, and next slide, please. This will take you to an information page which will tell you about what exactly you should report, how you should report it, and alternative ways to report. So you can also report to us via phone call or email using an accessible PDF. We can take reports if you'd like to report in sign language as well. And of course, people can report in their native languages. And then if you want to report on the website, please, you would have to click Report Now. So please, can I have the next slide? And this will take you to a short form where you can share the details of the incident, which protected characteristics were targeted, whether you've experienced it or you saw it happen to somebody else. We also want to know whether you're a fan, a steward, a match official, and we want to encourage not just fans to report, but people from clubs. Where the incident occurred, so if it's at a match, we want to hear about which match, which league, where in the stadium. If it's online, which social network platform, was it during a match that was happening live? And you can also write about the incident in your own words, give details of anybody that's involved, upload any evidence if you have some, so you might have a screenshot if it was something that happened online. And then you can always do this anonymously if you prefer. If you do leave your contact details, CAFE will respond to your report with kind of the next steps and the actions that we're going to be taking within the next 5 working days. So you will get a response in a timely manner from us. Brilliant. Next slide, please. So that brings me to the end of my talking part of the session, really. I just wanted to say thank you so much to the disabled fans that took part in our research. It's really great to hear your experiences, and it has really informed the kind of guidance that we're putting out there. And so if there's any questions, I'm available now for the next 5 minutes to answer them. So we've got a question that says, why do you think disability hate incidents in football are underreported? So I think one of the main things in football is that people don't feel that disability is a topic maybe taken seriously by clubs and national associations. We see a lot of really good public work from clubs and national associations on other diversity issues and minority groups, but disability is often left out of this. And I've seen countless examples of national association reporting tools, club reporting tools, where you're able to report racist, sexist, LGBTQ hate, but disability isn't included there. So we need to show that disabled people can report to us. I also think it's to do with people that have reported in the past not being taken seriously. As we heard in the presentation, people have reported and been asked to move. That's not going to incentivize people to report because they don't see the point. What's going to happen? And again, if it's inaccessible for them to report to clubs, so there is some apps that have been created for people to report on their phone, but that might not necessarily be accessible to all disabled people. So we need to make sure that there are multiple ways that people can report and they can choose whatever's most comfortable for them. So the next question, how can we stop fans and players using disability slurs when criticising or mocking action on the field? I think the only way that we can really do this is through educating people. I think quite a lot of people don't necessarily know that, or they haven't stopped to think about why a disability slur is offensive and derogatory for disabled people. So we need to kind of make it explicit what these terms are, why they're offensive, and kind of what the damage and impact this has on fans. And then hopefully from this education, people will start to reflect on the language that they're using and stop using it themselves. And I think one more question, if as a disabled person, I don't feel comfortable reporting an incident to my club due to the anxiety and worry of not being believed, what would you recommend I do? So in that case, I'd really recommend you report to CAFE. You can report to us anonymously if you like, and we will still make the club aware of your report, or and we will ensure that they take the report seriously. CAFE will always take every report that we receive seriously, and even if it seems very minor to you, it will be treated with as much seriousness as any other incident that's reported to us. Brilliant. Okay, I think we're pretty much out of time. So thank you so much to everyone for coming and for your interesting questions. It's been great chatting to you today. We've got a session on accessible ticketing coming up next, so please stick around for that. Thank you.